This man was rejected by Intel, and now every AI runs on his technology. ChatGPT, Tesla, Google, even your iPhone, all powered by the chips made by one company, NVIDIA. Everyone's talking about it, the stock, the AI boom, the $3 trillion empire, but no one's talking about him, the man who quietly built it all, chip by chip, in the shadows. A teenage immigrant, washing dishes at Denny's, sleeping under a desk. His idea laughed out of rooms. But 30 years later, that useless idea is now powering the future. This is the unbelievable true story of Jensen Huang, the architect behind NVIDIA, the mind behind the machines. Stick around, because this story isn't just about technology. It's about being underestimated, overlooked, and winning anyway. And if you've ever been underestimated, this story is for you. Tainan, Taiwan, 1963. A child is born into a modest family, curious, quiet, sharp-eyed. His name, Jensen Huang. But life wouldn't stay still for long. At just 5 years old, his family moves to Thailand, chasing better education, more opportunity. And then at age 9, a dramatic shift. Jensen and his brother are sent alone to Tacoma, Washington, to live with relatives. 2 young boys in a strange new land, far from home, language, and familiarity. But the real culture shock is yet to come. His relatives enroll him in a small religious boarding school in rural Kentucky, the Oneida Baptist Institute. The environment is harsh, strict. Jensen shares a dorm with older boys. One of them had been stabbed multiple times. Mornings start with cleaning chores, toilets, floors, then classes, then lights out. He's just 10, an immigrant child, alone. But this isn't where the story breaks. This is where it begins to forge. Because even here, in an unfamiliar place with no privilege to hold on to, Jensen adapts. He teaches his roommate how to read. He learns discipline. He learns focus. Years later, he would say, "That school toughened me up more than any academic exam ever could." Eventually, his parents join him in the US, and the family settles in Beaverton, Oregon. Jensen skips 2 grades and graduates high school at 16, not because he's a genius, but because he's relentless. He begins studying electrical engineering at Oregon State University, where he meets Lori, the woman who would later become his wife. But even as a college kid, he's still hustling. Denny's Diner, Portland. Jensen works nights, washing dishes, waiting tables, cleaning grease traps. No ego, just work. He often says that experience taught him the greatest rule of productivity: never leave your station empty-handed. He carried that grit, that quiet, relentless fire, into Stanford, earning his master's degree while working full-time. But even with all his effort, all his education, no one was waiting for him. No investor, no big-name company, just a dream, a vision no one else could see. When he finally dared to share it, they laughed. Because the world often doubts the ones who build quietly. But that rejection, it didn't break him. It built NVIDIA. The year was 1993. Silicon Valley was booming. Software startups, search engines, dot-com dreams. But Jensen Huang had a different vision. A strange one, not about websites, not about faster CPUs, but about something most people didn't even understand yet: graphics processing. At the time, computers were made for spreadsheets, not simulations. Games were basic, design tools were slow, artificial intelligence, just a science fiction fantasy. But Jensen saw the future differently. He believed that parallel processing, the ability to handle thousands of operations simultaneously, was the key to unlocking not just better graphics, but machine intelligence. It was bold, it was technical, it was ahead of its time. And everyone said it would fail. Intel dismissed it, venture capitalists passed. Even experts in the chip industry told him, nobody needs that much power just for graphics. But Jensen didn't flinch. He found 2 believers, Chris Malachowski and Curtis Preem, engineers like him, and together in a tiny office on the edge of Silicon Valley, they started NVIDIA. No big funding, no media buzz, just 3 engineers, 1 rented office, and a dream that felt foolish to everyone else. But Jensen had already survived worse, and deep down he knew the world might not understand now, but one day it would need exactly what they were building. And that day would come, not with a bang, but with a game. At first, NVIDIA didn't set out to change the world. They just wanted to make graphics faster. Their first product, the NV1, flopped. Too early, too weird. But then came Riva 128 in 1997. Suddenly, gamers saw something they'd never seen before. Real-time 3D graphics. Explosions, shadows, motion blur, fluid combat. And then in 1999, they dropped a bombshell, the GeForce 256, the world's first GPU, graphics processing unit. It didn't just improve visuals, it revolutionized them. And NVIDIA didn't stop there. Over the next decade, they dominated the gaming market, powering consoles, PC games, and cinematic effects. But quietly, something else was happening. Researchers began noticing these GPUs, originally built to render dragons and explosions, were stunningly good at running AI models. The same parallel processing Jensen had bet on for games was now perfect for deep learning. Training algorithms, running simulations, crunching impossible amounts of data. The tech world had just realized what Jensen saw a decade earlier, that GPUs weren't just for graphics. They were the brain of the future. And while others were still chasing faster frames, Jensen was already thinking 10 years ahead. By the mid-2010s, the world was changing. The age of deep learning had arrived. Companies everywhere were racing to build smarter machines. Voice assistants, self-driving cars, translation tools. But they all ran into the same wall: speed, power, scalability. Traditional CPUs just couldn't handle the massive amounts of data AI needed. And that's when everyone turned to NVIDIA, because Jensen Huang had already built the answer, quietly, patiently. While the world was busy playing games, he was building the infrastructure that AI would need to grow. In 2012, researchers at the University of Toronto used NVIDIA GPUs to train a deep neural network, and it crushed every benchmark in image recognition. AI went from lab experiment to global obsession. OpenAI, Google, Meta, Microsoft, they all started training models on NVIDIA chips. Tesla used them to power autonomous driving. ChatGPT, it runs on clusters of NVIDIA's H100 superchips, each costing tens of thousands of dollars, optimized for one thing: thinking like a human. And every time an AI generates a sentence, answers a question, creates an image, there's a high chance it's powered by NVIDIA silicon. Not Intel, not AMD, NVIDIA. And Jensen? He didn't do it with noise, no hype, no personal branding circus, just brutal focus, just engineering brilliance. He wasn't building a company anymore. He was building the foundation of the next human era. But this journey wasn't just about chips or code. It was about conviction, timing, belief. Because long before the world believed in AI, Jensen Huang believed in something else: himself. For most of his life, Jensen Huang has lived outside the spotlight. No flashy speeches, no viral sound bites, just one quiet, relentless belief: do the hard things. That's been his motto. Not move fast and break things, not fail fast, but discipline, precision, grit. While others chase shortcuts, he chased mastery. He once said, "We don't build products for the market we're in, we build for the market that's coming." That's what makes NVIDIA different, and that's what makes Jensen's leadership timeless. He leads like an engineer, thinks like a futurist, speaks like a teacher. He's known for mentoring young engineers personally, often spending hours in the trenches with his team, breaking down code, refining silicon designs, asking impossible questions. And when asked what drives him, he doesn't talk about fame or money. He talks about the responsibility of building the future responsibly. Because Jensen knows technology without soul is just noise, but technology with purpose, that's legacy. And maybe that's the biggest lesson. You don't have to be the loudest or the fastest, just the one who never stops showing up and keeps building, even when no one is watching. He didn't start with power. He started in a Denny's kitchen, scrubbing grease, washing dishes, no connections, no guarantees. And yet, from that greasy back room in Portland, he built the foundation of a $3 trillion empire. Not by shouting louder, not by chasing trends, but by following one principle: do the hard things. When others looked for shortcuts, he looked for problems worth solving. When the world laughed at his idea, he quietly built it anyway. And that, more than any chip or code, is what made NVIDIA unstoppable. Because greatness doesn't begin with applause. It begins in silence, with courage, with focus, with the willingness to do what most won't, for as long as it takes. If you're building something right now, if you're being doubted, dismissed, or delayed, remember this: you don't need applause to start. You just need the courage to keep going, even when no one's watching, because that's where empires begin. Want to see how AI is creating real opportunities for everyday people, not just billionaires? Tap this next video and discover what no one's telling you. Subscribe for more stories that don't just motivate you, they rewire your mindset.